Okay, welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast, which you could be watching on YouTube. You could be listening on one of the various streaming platforms of just audio. I don't ever do this, and I wanted to take a moment to do it today, but just say thank you to the people who do watch or listen.
Absolutely.
But also, if you're one of our friends, you're like, I would love to be supportive of the podcast, but like I don't have the time.
Right.
We do long podcasts. We admit that.
We do.
Here's what you do. Go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah.
Click to play the episodes and just let them play.
Let it play.
You don't even have to listen. We don't know the difference. Just help us get those numbers up. That's how you be supportive.
Listen, I've done it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. Cleaning the house, I just fire up YouTube on my TV and just let us play.
Yeah. Just have us on. We're perfectly fine being that background noise while you do whatever you do.
We know what we are and what we aren't.
Yeah.
But I mean, listen, we're a hoot and we're charming and we have a great time. So listen to us.
That's right. Yeah. Just be a good friend.
Listen to last week's episode where we spend an alarming amount of time talking about the handsomeness of Ryan Gosling.
I think we spent the perfect amount of time talking about the handsomeness.
Maybe we didn't spend enough
of
time.
Ryan Gosling. I will say, it's all in the first year of this podcast. There's been so much experimenting. There's been so much growth. And if you tried us early on, give us another shot. Yeah. We're getting better.
You are.
I'm definitely getting better.
You're getting better. I don't know if I'm getting better or not. I feel like I'm just constantly contradicting myself and stumbling over my words. And
not at all, Andy.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, just kind of an update on where we are in the podcast. I should just say
too, like when we started this, there was no planning. You were like, "Hey, we should do a podcast tomorrow," and I, like literally, this was a Saturday night, and you're like, "Hey, I bought some microphones. You want a podcast tomorrow?" We were out in the foyer, getting ready to go watch Mission Impossible, and I was like, "Yeah." And this is what we've been doing ever since. And we rarely are like, "Okay, let's really sit down and map this out." I mean, we try to be authentic because this is what we used to do. Like you and I would just talk about movies, and we try to translate that to the podcast. So
absolutely. And if nothing else, what we really want, if somebody asked me like, what's the goal of this podcast, other than just that we have a blast doing it, is we just want people to love movies like we love movies. And so we hope that the result of our podcast is people appreciate and enjoy movies a little more.
Absolutely.
Even when we're talking bad about a movie, it's because we want you to love movies, so we're trying to save you from, we don't want you to see Madam Web because we want you to love movies. And if you're seeing...
And that barely counts as a movie.
If you're seeing 3 movies a year, like I have friends that maybe like see 3 movies a year, we want to be like, don't see Madam Web. Don't waste it on that one.
Don't waste it on that.
Here's the ones that you need to be...
Well, and it's like, even when we don't like something or we get riled up about things we don't like, it's like, it's because you're passionate about the things you love.
Absolutely.
And we love movies. So it's like, when we're negative, it's not because I want to be, I'm not a negative person, but it's just like you're passionate about the things you care about deeply. And we care deeply about movies.
Absolutely. And this week we're going to talk about something that is from a franchise that I am passionate about.
Yeah.
New Planet of the Apes movie came out. Mm-hmm. And just so want to set the stage a little bit with some background here.
Yeah.
I say I'm passionate about the franchise. I'm not passionate about all of the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Whatever.
Yes. I have no connection to the old Planet of the Apes movies. In fact, I don't even know that I've ever really watched a whole one of those. Yeah. Obviously, like I've seen clips. They're one of those things that were just in the culture and you're sort of aware of, even if you've never really watched. It's
weird, I know.
Like, I feel like I saw plenty of movies that even had, like, joking references to it or homages to it.
There's a great Simpsons episode. Yeah, there's a great Simpsons episode where they do kind of riff on Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. Then in early 2000s, of course, Tim Burton tried his hand at a remake. And that was one of those movies that I remember wanting to be good.
And it wasn't.
And one of those ones you walk out and you're just like,
what was that?
You know, like... It was one of those ones at first I was like, there was... And then, like, over time you're like, no.
It had no legs.
It just didn't.
It left work. No, like, cultural impact in the movie world.
Yeah. So when the whole franchise got this new reboot look with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2011, I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I did not see the movie when it came out. I just I was like, Planet of the Apes, I don't care about this. I have no connection to this. It starred James Franco, who at the time I was like, I'm indifferent to James Franco. So it wasn't even like the talent around the movie got me interested. So I was just like, I'm just out. And I didn't really hear much about it. A few years later, 2014, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes comes out. I'm still not like interested. What got me first interested was at the end of 2014, some online movie critics that I respected were giving their best of the year, and these two guys listed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes as their favorite movie of the year. And I was like, kind of with them on their list. And when they named that, I was like, I really just watched this whole video to watch them say a Planet of the Apes movie was their favorite movie. But just their kind of joy and enthusiasm, like, oh, I had so much fun with this movie, and oh, it was a blast, and it was so well made and stuff. And I was like, well, have I been missing something here? Like, maybe I should give it a try. And it was at that point that I went back and watched Rise, and I was like, oh, Rise, like, this is a good movie. I really enjoyed this. And then I was kind of bummed out to find out, this next one that came out, and they switched directors, and
a lot of
the
times
cast
that's a bad
is
sign.
different. Obviously, the cast was entirely different because the same person who played Caesar, the main ape, was back, but like the human characters were all different. And so I was like, oh, like now I'm not confident again because it's a shift. And then Dawn was amazing. It was even better than Rise. And I was like, this franchise is doing something incredible. I never saw this coming, but those two guys were right.
Yeah.
This is a great movie. And so then by that time, I'm all in.
Do you remember what it was? I mean, do you remember what it was specifically?
I don't. I mean, like, I'm going to kind of get in a little bit when we talk about this, about like what it is about the whole franchise.
Fair enough.
So I'll save that.
Okay.
But by the time that War from the Planet of the Apes is going to come out, which is 2017. I'm all in. That was a movie that I've talked about before. I did the best job I've ever done of a movie I want to see, avoiding all previews. And I went in like really no idea what to expect. Loved the movie. But I ended it going, what a great wrap up to the Caesar trilogy.
Yeah.
Which is what it was. Caesar was the main ape throughout all three movies.
Yeah.
He, from his birth in the first one to his death in the last one. And I was like, leave it. It's perfect.
And they did not.
So 2011, 2014, 2017, they were going 3-year gaps. They did wait 7 years. Probably the bare minimum amount of time they needed to wait.
Sure.
It was long enough that now I'm like, I'm not like open to the idea. It wasn't like, okay, now I'm open to the idea. But as they did the previews, I wasn't like, man, they're really rushing the story along. It's kind of like, oh, like I kind of thought they were going to be done. And now that they're coming back, I don't know. I was a little more open to the possibility. But like you wondered, would I have some would I be more nervous or angry or upset? I was very cautiously optimistic.
Sure.
It's doing the thing once again where it's moving on from the director that, Matt Reeves now, he did 2 of them that I loved, the best 2, I think. And a guy who's only ever made Maze Runner movies.
Never seen it.
In West Ball. And I never watched the Maze Runner movies either, but my thought was like, I feel bad being judgy about the Maze Runner movies without having seen them. But, they were just one of a series of movies that came out with this whole YA boom.
Yeah.
With the Hunger Games series,
Hunger Games really ushered it in.
Divergent series, and the Maze Runner. It all to me just sort of blurs together. I'm just like, oh gosh, like somebody who directed those movies is going to come in and do the Apes movies. And of course, now it's a wholly new cast because Andy Serkis, who played Caesar, he's not going to come back and play a new ape because he was Caesar. He's going to be done with it now.
Right.
And so there's just all this reason for concern going in.
All valid. All valid.
New writer, Matt Reeves. Okay, so I need to back up too. Matt Reeves, this is what I really want to give him credit for. Because not only was he did a great job directing, and this is what people I know come to the podcast for. They really want to hear us talk about directors and writers and all of that.
They do, yeah.
Matt Reeves, when he got the first script for the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it had done this long time jump to more like what the old Planet of the Apes were, where they're a whole society.
Right.
And it was his idea to say, I want to scrap it and go back to Caesar and just go like a few years down the line and see like the slow change. And the studio approved it as long as he could still get to the film like date they had in mind. And so Matt Reeves is the one who who saved this franchise. I feel like if they had done what they had originally planned to,
They
like
would have gotten too
one
far
origin
ahead.
story and then right ahead to where they like, I wouldn't be interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt Reeves shepherded this the way that I think it should have been shepherded.
Yeah.
And then, so him being gone as a writer, as much as being a director, made me nervous.
Sure.
And they're jumping ahead. It doesn't say in the movie; it just says several generations. But I read online it's supposed to be 300 years.
I saw that too. Yeah.
After the Caesar story, and I guess now is where we'll just get into the movie itself. I really enjoyed this movie.
Okay.
It got past all my concerns.
It did.
And I thought this was a perfectly worthy sequel to that original trilogy.
Great. That's great to hear.
Did
it have to work to earn your, you know what I mean? Was it like an hour in, you were like, okay. Was it one of those type of deals? Tell us about the progression.
So one of the things I love about the Apes movies is the pacing of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're very patient stories.
They are.
They don't mind taking their time. And it really does. It's becoming a common theme on this podcast for us to talk about. Action movies are at their best when big characters and what feels like a big circumstance are happening in actually like kind of small settings and stories.
Yep.
So as the movie began and it's just building this world that feels very large, but it's actually not like, it's not very expansive. It's like this little village and they're not doing a ton. It's really just building it out through this one ritual of them trying to like collect an eagle's egg for some sort of ceremony. I didn't even entirely understand what's going on, but I'm like, they're really just letting this breathe and build a world very slowly and calmly. And I'm like, and that was like when I'm like, okay, I'm in. They've kept that same patient world building and tone that I really liked in the other ones. So it didn't take long for me to latch in. Now that didn't mean that I knew the whole movie was going to turn out, right? Because there was always the danger of,
but you were able to kind of relax a little bit.
When it felt like I'm still in the same Apes universe. I'm good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I've been talking a lot, so you want to give some of your initial thoughts?
So really enjoyed the movie. I guess we'll backtrack a little bit. I'm like you. I have zero connection to Charlton Heston and Dirty Apes and all that stuff. Is in the culture, but no connection. Probably have never watched one of those movies all the way through. Very similar to you. Then they announced the Tim Burton one, blah, and then they announced this new one in 2011, and I just ignored it. So we're very similar in that aspect. Where I was like, don't care, uninterested, never had that strong of an attachment. Anyway, didn't like the Tim Burton one. Totally blew it off. Very, very similar to you. And then the second one comes out, and you start seeing these really positive reviews. And I was like, wait, what? Kind of the same thing. So I had, just a similar journey, and then went back and caught up and was like, oh, like just like you're saying, like this is a good movie. Second, I agree with you too. And then the second one comes out and you're like, now that was a really good movie. And then I was pumped for the third one, saw it, loved it. So very, very similar to you. And then this one comes out. The only thing that's different between, I think, us is I just, for whatever reason, and it just happens with movies where it's like I loved them, but they didn't mean quite as much to me, to the point where I didn't go into this nervous.
Yeah.
Like for whatever reason, I don't know. I don't know if it was like I just have a confidence that they'll do a good job. I don't know, but saw the movie, liked it a lot. I do have a few nitpicks. That's kind of what we do sometimes. But this is exactly what I mean when I talk on the podcast about like, this is a world I want to be in. This is a world that is interesting to me. It looks, it looks good up on the screen. The apes are interesting characters. It's a cool looking world. Even just in this movie, when they're at the beginning, when they're climbing to get the eggs, I'm like, okay, this looks like something. It's visually pleasing. Right off the bat, you've got a nice dynamic between the three apes that are going after the eggs. They don't have to do a lot, but you just understand very quickly what the dynamic is, or at least as much as you need to.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, as opposed to like, as usual, we'll pick on Transformers. I don't care. I don't want to be in that world. It's not interesting. It's not exciting. It's not visually pleasing. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, where it's like, this is a cool world to be in, this Planet of the Apes universe they've created.
So this franchise does something that I about as well as any sci-fi franchise, which is for a world that is based on the science fiction issue of it was all based on them humans trying to find a cure for something, and creating a virus essentially that made apes reacted to and became smarter and like advanced, and then humans that reacted to by either killing them or like taking away their intellect and stuff. And so starting with that premise, the way they build the world out to me makes so much sense.
Right.
Like everything that happens in the world of like, this is exactly like, yeah, of course, this is the way that the world develops. And then in each of the movies, I love that I can always understand the perspectives of both sides, even if there's like a clear good guy and bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times there's gray area, but I always am like, I understand the perspectives of both.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% believe that these characters would exist in this world.
Right.
Exactly the way they are.
Yeah.
And it carries on into this one. Like having this sort of like peaceful, but we keep to ourselves and we don't really like even keep up with the history of the world. Like we kind of withdrawn ape village. And then you've got this ape village that knows the history but has twisted it,
right?
And they're more militant about it.
Yes.
And then you've got the different factions of humans, and just like every group, it's like, of course, this world is the Apes Advance is playing out all these political things that happen in real life.
Yes.
And these struggles for power. So that's what I love about it. Is it feels so real for a movie that is based on entirely on fiction.
And that's just a great lesson. Like no matter what kind of movie you're making. And this is why I think for the longest time, Marvel succeeded. Like, take your world that you're creating seriously. Mm-hmm. Even if it's ridiculous, like, take it seriously. And then again, you know, like something like Transformers, where it's like, they're just horsing around. Like, I remember in one of the Transformers movies, like, one of the Transformers, like, pees on that guy. He's, like, peeing, like, oil or something. It's like, you're laughing at your own creation up here. It's just stupid. So yes, I agree with you completely.
Yeah, no, you're right about Marvel, and it goes back to my favorite thing in Iron Man 1 is his announcing that he is Iron Man. Mm-hmm. But Marvel is like, yes, that's exactly like how someone would act if they were Iron Man. Yeah. They'd be proud about it. They would be like a celebrity in the real world, but also like important and a defender of people.
Exactly. And when I say like take yourself seriously, I don't mean don't have fun.
Right.
Don't make jokes. I'm not saying that, but don't make a joke of your movie and of your material and of your characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. These movies they're very serious, but they're very sincere. These Apes movies.
Yeah.
There is, it makes me realize like I am very simple in what I want out of a movie. Because there is a real simplicity to the characters. Like the apes, as advanced as they are, like they're very simple.
Yeah.
Like they don't understand, like there's a childlikeness to all the apes, even as advanced as they are. The main character ape, they don't have to do a lot to make you like on his side. He's just a very
noble.
It's like he's just a good kid in this movie. He just wants to like please people and do right, and just like he just kind of has good character.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm in on this ape.
And, you're right. It's like all they have to do is like at the very beginning, they show like he interacts with his mom. You're like, oh, he's got a sweet relationship with his mom. He wants the approval of his father.
Yeah.
Instantly understandable, relatable characteristics.
Well, and where they really like sell like this is a high character ape I can get behind is they make this dangerous climb, and the first nest they get to has 3 eggs, but the law is you have to leave one behind, and there's 3 of them. And he goes, you 2 are going to take them. You're older than me, and
I'll have my time.
I'll be the one who makes the sacrifice. Yeah. And just doing that, one simple little act of friendship.
In the first 5 minutes of the movie.
And you're like, I'll follow you to the end. You know, that's
you're like, exactly right. You know, just because we're movie nerds, it doesn't mean we need these ultra complex layers. Like, it's just the effort and the willingness to show some characteristic of these characters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it goes into, we want movies to be good. We want to buy into these worlds. Sometimes all you have to do is just don't give us a reason not to.
Yeah. Just exactly. Very well said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I do want to kind of double back to the credits a little bit. Yeah. Really, I only wrote down 4 casting credits because there's more people than that, but I felt like all that was really worth pointing out was that's Owen Teague plays Noah, the main character ape, who's basically the new kind of stand-in for Caesar from the original trilogy. He has the same look. He even has the same like birthmark, like kind of missing patch of hair to identify. He's played by an actor named Owen Teague, who I did not recognize at all. I looked at his IMDb. The only thing I recognize him from is he was in the movie It. He played one of the bullies, a long-haired bully who in the sewers is like doing his little homemade flamethrower thing, and then Pennywise kills.
I would have never made that connection.
Oh no! And I would have never thought that I would see that actor again in anything. Kevin Durand, who plays Proximus, the
it's so funny. We were just praising him from Abigail.
We were, and I was like, watching this. I purposely didn't look up who was playing these and afterwards I was like, man, who played Proximus? Like, I just have no idea. Like, somebody did a really good job. And when I looked it up and it's Kevin Durand, I was like, I cannot believe that. Awesome. You could have given me a million guesses.
I know.
If you would have said it's somebody you know, somebody you've seen in movies. Can you guess with a million guesses? And I never would have guessed Kevin Durand.
I know.
But yeah, like it just raised my level of respect, like you said, for that guy who I already said, like, I think he's a little underrespected because of the roles he plays. He plays such a doofus all the time. Yeah. So people, I think, just kind of like view him as, well, he's a doofus and not a talented guy, which he is. So I thought that was really cool. And then the two human characters that are of any significance. Freya Allen plays May, and she's the main human character. All through the previews and the posters and stuff, every time I saw her, I was like, she looks so daggone familiar, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and I didn't look it up till again after the movie. I was like, oh, she's in The Witcher, which I've watched that series. She plays Ciri, who is like this princess that Henry Cavill's character, The Witcher, is taking care of, and she's really good in that. Yeah, and she was, I thought, really good in this, and so it was just kind of funny that like I didn't know her and I couldn't place her at all. But she has a very distinct look. Yeah, so I would think I would remember it, but just all throughout, I couldn't place it till then. And then William H. Macy, who people know from a million things.
I had zero clue he was in this movie.
Yeah, and William H. Macy, I don't know. I just imagine every time he's cast in a part, the script says, we're looking for a William H. Macy type, like, because he is just such a distinct character actor. But he's so likable. Like, he's so likable. When he shows up in something, I'm never disappointed. I'm never like, oh, William H. Macy. I'm always like,
he's probably gonna drag this down.
Like, and I think sort of his expertise is he's not like an A-list star, but he always seems a little overqualified for the roles that he does in these supporting roles. So when he shows up in this small supporting role, he like really brings credibility to a movie. They're like, man, William H. Macy is going to be this supporting role in this movie. How like significant is this movie?
It's a smart idea, you know, for filmmakers, get someone of that level, because like you said, it just instantly elevates things. Yeah.
And you know, he's not in it very much, and his part is almost a nothing part.
It is. But
it's significant because it's everything he says. You're just like, this feels more significant because you got William H. Macy to do it. So I thought that was pretty cool. So those were the 4 casting things that I thought were noteworthy.
And it's funny though, some movies just don't really require just a crop of A-list stars.
Yeah. I am curious because I think the one person from this who I think's career could continue to be ascending, and we look back and be like, oh man, that was one of their early roles, is the Freya Allen girl between The Witcher and this, like, and I could see her becoming a bigger movie star over the years, and us, you know, in hindsight going, oh yeah, it starred Freya Allen, even though right now nobody knows that name.
Right. You think it might be a name people will know sooner rather than later.
Exactly. But we'll see.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. Sometimes you think and it doesn't work out that way, and sometimes it's clear that a movie's just a launching pad for the next big thing. So,
and one day we'll get into that, as we've talked about. One day we're going to do a pod of like, I thought they were going to be a bigger deal, and go through a bunch of these stars that looked like they were poised to,
and then it just didn't happen.
Off. Didn't happen. Let's talk a little bit. Just again, we said when we do these movies, single movies, we want it all to sort of be like forewarned. We could spoil stuff, but at this point, we're definitely going to get into some spoiler territory. Sure. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, stop what you're doing. Go watch the
movie and then resume.
And then resume listening to us. This is the second movie in a row where despite what I thought I knew, basically what the gist of all the movie beats were going to be from the preview, I was surprised by a twist in the movie, and that was Freya Allen's character being the type of human, like, and they say in the previews, like, she's smarter than most and stuff. So I thought, oh, they'll meet and they'll bond, and he'll be like, oh, look, humans still have some value. But I never expected her to be like the kind of conniving, like, have her own agenda. She's on a mission of her own type thing.
I'll tell you what, that took me a minute to process all that.
Yeah,
because you're right. I just saw trailers. I didn't really seek them out, just saw them from other movies. And you're like, okay, I can tell what the beats are going to be.
Yeah.
She's hesitant. There's conflict. She's slowly going to grow to accept these apes. And then by the end, they're going to form a bond. And honestly, that's not what happens at all.
No.
And that really, when that movie ended, I was like, huh. And that just took me a little bit of time, even though I just saw it 2 days ago. Yeah. It's taken me some time to adjust to that.
Yeah. And it's great because it doesn't even do it all in a moment. There's not like it like slowly develops, and as it goes, you're kind of watching going because our entry into this world is the Noah character, the Noah ape.
Yes,
you're on his side.
Yeah,
and so as she starts doing stuff that isn't in his best interest, but in hers and humans, you're almost like, well, that jerk, I'm not with her, and then you kind of think like, well, but shouldn't I be with her? She's on the human side of things. And
that's where a bold choice.
That's where you get the, like, I understand all of the characters, even the villainous ape. I get his motivation, I get her motivation, and I get Noah's motivation, and they're just all in conflict because they all have different motivations.
Yeah, and she says it. That movie, like, this was all ours before it was yours, and you go, man, I don't really like what she's doing, but I do kind of get where she's coming from.
You'd be like, if I was her, wouldn't I also be trying to, like...
it was definitely a choice.
Yeah.
And, we often criticize where, it's like, man, it's so predictable. And, this wasn't, but it definitely... And I even wrestled a little bit like, man, did I like that character? Was that a well-written character? But the more I think about it, I think you're exactly right, where that is a movie that's trying to be honest, I guess, about how the characters in this universe would behave.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just walk away going, well, that did feel honest. Maybe it wasn't what I wanted. Because I thought you think like this is all building towards the, and I was thinking like it's going to lead to this moment where he has to save her and they make eye contact and basically what she's saying is like, now I trust you.
Yeah.
And you don't get that moment.
No.
It's kind of wild in a way.
Like it really like, it builds to that that expectation, and I think it's a great scene when the apes are tracking her down. They're in the field. This is from the previews in the grass.
That was.
And
I actually wanted that scene to be longer.
And I love the throwback tribute that when she finally she sees him out there calling for him. These apes are coming, and she stands up and she shouts Noah, and it's a callback to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where Caesar, he's a smart ape, but that no ape has spoken, and finally, like, the first time he speaks, he stands up to this villainous zoo, keeper, whatever, and yells no. Mm-hmm. And when you don't think humans can speak, she yells Noah. It's like an echo of that. It is. And it's like, it gave me kind of chills. It's like, is it a little cheesy? Maybe it might be, but I love it. I'm in.
It's always nice when you feel like you're rewarded for being a fan of a franchise of movies.
Yes.
Like you just get those moments like, aha, I know what they did there.
Yeah.
That scene ruled, by the way. I love the overhead shot.
It was great.
That was great.
You know what it reminded me of is the one good part from
Lost
Jurassic World, Lost World. Yeah, with the shot of the raptors. Like, this is
literally the one good part.
Yeah. But that, again, what this franchise and this movie does so well is like small scenes that feel so big and significant. So you go from that, and then the scene where they're crossing that bridge, and like you see the bad apes are there and coming under the bridge.
That was cool. The way they just kind of emerged underneath that bridge.
And that whole set piece felt like a big, significant action set piece, even though it's like very few characters, very limited setting.
On this little bridge.
And it's just intense because the rapids coming through. And that, it goes back to the Terminator 2 discussion. Big characters, big consequences, small setting.
Yeah.
And
that's been kind of like our theme of the year with all these different movies. And it all started with you making that comment at Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And you're so right.
Yeah. So I loved that. I loved just the journey of this movie, I think. I read where the director said his pitch for this movie was Apocalypto with apes.
Yeah.
And I get what he's saying, because Apocalypto is this like very simple story of primitive tribe runs into another tribe that abducts them, and then they escape to freedom. I will say, this is going to get me off topic, but it is interesting in that metaphor. I don't know how far he wanted to take it, but the end of Apocalypto is them seeing the Spanish conquistadors arriving, who brought like death, destruction, and slavery to them, and like basically wiped out what was the villainous tribe that was, but kind of changed their whole landscape. And I wonder if the humans in their contact, whatever the rival was supposed to mirror that.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't mean to take it that far. Maybe I'm over reading into it.
That's a good read, though.
But I was, in my nerdery, I was putting that together.
Sure.
But back to the story of just being I love that it was just this very simple journey of someone who starts in a village, through the events that happen, like the villagers get taken, and then it's him going toward the village, and then they get to that kingdom, and then it's get back. Like it's
a very simple story.
It is, but it never feels like a small story.
It doesn't.
But I loved being on the journey, because again, it just paces very well. Everything
takes its time, but yet you're never like, we got to get to the next scene. Like we got to go.
And it didn't do a lot of things we were talking about, like the whole way I expected him and the girl to bond didn't happen. And that was to my delight. Like I didn't want a long, cheesy, like you were saying, slow, obvious build to, I mean, they bonded in some very basic ways. And like, this is what I guess I was getting at earlier. That moment of like her running to him to the rescue and being chased, and that split second timing thing, that was the moment that you were saying, like, you almost felt like the end was going to build up to, and then from there, it almost starts to
I know.
It's like they come together,
and then they really drift apart.
Once they get to that kingdom of apes, and she's like, I'm on a mission. I've got my motivations, and I'm going. You want to help me or not? It could be helpful to you too. Like maybe it'd be mutually beneficial, but like
this is what I'm doing.
I am going to do this.
Yeah,
and.
It's really gutsy to avoid that temptation. And kudos to the actors for being willing to take that role of like, hey, you don't get to really be you're not the hero of this movie.
Right.
And your character is probably going to do things that people are not going to, because like you said, it's Noah's story and he's always presented as likable. And then for her it's like she never just outright stabs him in the back.
Right.
But it's crazy. Like and you can imagine like how tempting it is to like, man, no, I want to hit the beats that everyone expects me to hit. And honestly, because this was a well done movie and it looked great and everything, those beats probably would have worked. You know what I mean? Like, because you're on this journey and you like this world and everything. So if they had the scene where he does save her and she goes, you know what? I was wrong about apes. They probably would have done that well.
Yeah.
But I love when a director or a creative team or whoever, studio, whatever, it's like, no, we are sticking to our guns. And this is the story. Like, I understand that this story, this is the wide open path, but we want to veer off just a little bit. And that is admirable to me. And especially when it's done, in a movie that is good.
Right.
Because if the movie's already struggling and then they try and take that, that go off that path, that can be the final nail in the coffin of like, you know what, I'm checked out now. But this, it's like, man, you were really willing to take the narrow path instead of the wide path. And I think too, probably some of that is, and again, I don't know this, some of that is probably influenced by the desire to keep this universe going.
Yeah.
So it's like, it might end up where there is that moment with Noah and May and that nice moment we want, but it's like, but not yet. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm terribly curious where they go from here, because I imagine there will be more of these movies.
It's open well.
Open for that.
Oh yeah.
They could pick up this story even just a couple years down the road. They could do a whole trilogy with Noah like they did with Caesar, or they could jump again. And I don't know what they would want to do.
Know. And that's probably ultimately, that's probably a good place for a movie to land.
Yeah.
Where you're like, boy, they've got some options. What are they going to do? As opposed to either, I could care less what they do. I don't want to see another one of these movies. Or, it's like sometimes it's like, man, it's so obvious. We know what the end result's going to be. Now I just want to get there. Whereas this is like, I'm interested to go on this journey.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, all right, let's just get to the good part.
Yeah. So near the climax, a part that really kind of crystallizes this conflict between Noah and May that's not really ever spoken, not really ever addressed even, is when they're in that silo, when they finally get in, I guess it was like a silo that they're trying to get into, and May goes off on her own, and the apes are looking around, and it's, I guess they get in like a little kid's classroom or something, and they find the kid's book of a zoo and seeing the monkeys behind the cage. And at first it's like, oh man, this is kind of powerful for them to be seeing this. But what's going to happen now? My thought was now they're going to have a big overreaction back to May, and then that's what's and they avoided that temptation, which I was really glad about because
they kind of just look at each other for a minute, and she's like, "Hey, come on, let's go."
All that it really does, is you can see from that point on, he looks at her with less trust.
Yep.
But he doesn't like abandon the plan. It's not like he goes, "Oh, now I trust Proximus. He was right, and I'm going to turn you in." And like, I kind of thought we were going to go through some whole big ordeal like that.
And
we didn't. He just was like, hey, should I not be trusting this girl? Am I making a bad decision? And I love that even by the time the movie ends, he got what he wanted. Like, he got his clan out of Proximus's encampment in slavery. But you can tell there's still this idea of like, did I make the right choice by helping May?
Yeah.
Because when we both were just trying to get something out of Proximus and his camp there, it was like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So we're connected through, we're both trying to get by Proximus.
Right.
But she was kind of clear that like, I'm still the enemy. It's still humans versus apes.
Yeah.
And I helped her get what she wanted. And now she's out there with this stuff. Like, we got past Proximus, but I might have accidentally helped a bigger enemy down the road. And I kind of love that ambiguity of him not knowing, like, did I make the right decision? Because my whole thing was I'm trying to take care of my clan, and I might have done something worse in my attempts to help.
Yep.
And so that's what I mean. Like, the movie on the surface is not complex. No. It's this very simple.
It's like an onion. You keep peeling back the layers.
Thinking through all this, and you're like, but there are challenging like conundrums for these characters in this movie.
A lot of moral. Yeah.
And that's what I love. Like, these Apes movies all have this.
I thought it was such an interesting choice at the end. You get the Noah May, she comes back and that's, there you are kind of hitting the familiar beat. Like, I knew for a fact she would show up at that village and the apes kind of look. And I thought it was such an interesting choice to show her holding the gun behind her back.
Yeah.
I was like, I was like, whoa. I was like, golly, that's when it really clicked in my brain of like, man, this movie is really leaning into this. We're not friends. We're not outright enemies. There's no more trust has been established from when and that is the cliche. Whether it's an Apes movie or not, two characters meet, there's no trust, and by the end of the movie, there is trust. And even that beat of them connecting in a, maybe in a lesser movie, it would have been I was wrong about you. Now I trust you. Let's shake hands. No. None of that. And then you get that scene that's like, she had a gun behind her back.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you like, does she have that to protect herself? Was she considering shoot you? It's left to us, the audience, to debate or to decide why she had that gun behind her back.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's just
glad
like
you brought that up because it's such a small thing that has so much impact.
But they could have easily been like, you know what, just don't put that shot in. We're not going to show the gun. And then they have a conversation and it's fairly civil and they're both able to kind of give their point of view. And I think she says again at the end, this was all ours first. And he has his points. And then it's just kind of a look and then they just go their separate ways. And I was like, whoa, wow, this is really not different. Just really different, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely a choice. Now that I've seen it, I'd love to research and to hear some interviews maybe with the director and if he is going to talk about this. You know,
Right.
like, this is a choice we made.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've watched like a movie with director's commentary. I'd be interested in this
Same.
one to like just hear him explaining.
Just break all this down. Yeah.
Going back to that climactic silo sequence. So there's so many little moments I love. I love when it looks like they're caught. They open the silo and there he is Proximus. Their kind of typical thing. Like there's so many times where you think, okay, now like we've fallen into the typical movie beat.
Right.
And even if that, just as you think you know what's happening, May shoots the one ape and everybody freezes. And I love that Proximus's reaction is, okay, cool, like you can go. Just tell me there's more of those in here. That's his whole response. And you're like, oh wow, that's not at all the way I thought that was gonna go. But that's kind of like it's kind of crazy and cool.
You got us, but
then it turns into Noah and her as Noah's looking at her going, Don't do it. Like my family's all right here, and I know what you're about to do. And she's just like, does it?
Sorry, this is what I have to. Like, it's incredible. It's amazing to think about all the things that they were probably, or maybe not, but it's like all the things all the ways they could have played it safe. Yes. That's how I'll phrase it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the whole movie, and again, the whole franchise does this. It always feels like they're going to be building to some big action sequence, and there is a big action sequence, but it's never the big action sequence that you expect.
Yeah.
And so the big action sequence really is like the flooding of this thing and them trying to escape, and there's the one big gorilla that chases them in that,
which looks
and then
really
once they
cool.
get out, he fights Proximus. So there's really like not that much action that happens, but it felt like a big climactic action piece, even though it wasn't the type of action that I was expecting.
I know. I mean, honestly, a lot of the big kind of action, or you know, towards the end was just them scaling up there and them getting up the side of the cliff and everything. And it never turned into like the full scale this clan versus this clan war.
Yeah.
Really interesting the things they chose not to do. Hopefully because they're just leaving some meat on the bone for, you know, if they want to continue this world.
Yeah, but I also think it's so much more effective because if you just gave me that big, like all the apes fighting and it's just sort of this big chaotic mess of like, nothing's really happened. But you get instead that the intimate chase of this big gorilla who's been the bad guy who's intimidating for the small monkey through flooding waters. Through this, and it's just like as it's happening, I feel such an intensity. And I'm going to keep always going back to the Terminator 2 example. It had the feel of T-1000 on your heels. But like, how are they going to get away? How are they going to survive this? And then eventually, you know, he figures out the way, and I'm not going to say how, but just to leave some.
And again, that wasn't any big complex thing. It was just like, that was a smart way to get yourself out of this. And so that was, it was a lot of fun. It was. And I will say this too, like, you know, because we're always championing movie theaters. This looks amazing up on the big screen.
Yes.
I IMAX'd.
Yes, I did too.
You did as well. It looks incredible.
It looks like, so I think it's $120 million budget.
It looks like a $300 million movie.
It's one of those movies that I sit there and go like, I'm not surprised because every one of these shots has to be a really expensive shot because of the effects.
Oh my gosh.
The apes are just so well done. They're so lifelike. So
it's
good.
Like, up on that IMAX screen, you know, when there were times when it would linger on any of the apes' faces, but you know, you get a lot of shots of Noah and stuff. It's like, man, it looks like the individual hairs on his face looks like they put thought and consideration into each individual hair.
Yeah.
And they did such a great job. I was never sitting there going, well, which one is that?
Right.
Like they do a great job of really making them their own unique characters.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time he gets to the kind of the prison or what, you know, not prison, but Proxima's lair and everything.
Yeah.
When he reunites with his girl, you know, it's like, oh, there she is. Like they did such a good job of making them stand out as characters. But this movie looks incredible up on the screen.
That is the one thing that has been consistent through all four movies now.
They've done that well.
It's the same effects team that has done them. So there's a consistency to it, but also like now we're looking at from 2011 to 2024. It's been 13 years. Obviously, the actual filming was probably a little before those, but I read in the trivia the main guy at the Weta workshop who did the effects was basically like, man, when we did Rise, like we were so proud of like this is the pinnacle of our effects capacities. Like how could this get any better? He's like, and after over a decade of advancements, we look back at some of that and go, man, we've come a long way.
Oh,
and he's
man.
like, it's just amazing to see like the advancements. And I'm like, yeah, like I can't even understand how they can do some of the things. I'm sitting there looking at a scene like where they're climbing the cliff wall, which I laughed at when they do the upward shot. I'm like, someone's definitely going to overdub the cliffs of insanity.
Yeah, right.
As he looks up it, but when he's climbing and the girl's having to hold onto his back, I'm like, how do you blend the effects with a real human actor that pressed together. And it's so
incredible.
seamless. I don't understand how that's physically possible, but so cool that movies
can do that.
But it goes back to what we talk about all the time. Like, we love those amazing effects when they serve the story. All of the effects are really doing is we need these people to be apes.
Yeah.
And it's not like a shot for the effect's sake or anything like that. All the effects are literally just serving what we need to see in the story. We need it to be apes doing these things, and that's what the effects are doing.
Yeah, we don't hate special effects.
Yeah.
We rip on, Transformers or Godzilla, Kong and all this stuff. And it's not because they're special effects movies. It's because they're mindless special effects movies.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, all kinds of examples. Okay, I'm in favor of this. And this I could have watched a 20-minute sequence of them just climbing and swinging and doing all that stuff because it looks so good.
Yeah.
It looks incredible. Yeah, it's so visually appealing. And like we've already talked about it, but I'll give one more shout out. That overhead shot of her hiding in the weeds and the apes, and that was all just great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Probably the last thing I really want to touch on is I do love the lore within this movie's universe. Like, again, we referenced it briefly, but Caesar as this character that's big in the ape history, but the way that one culture is twisting him, and Proximus calls himself Proximus Caesar. He was the first Caesar. I'm the new Caesar, and we still pay tribute to like some of his principles. Apes together strong, but his big thing was
them to fit our agenda.
But he leaves out the ape doesn't kill ape. He says, "I'll sacrifice as many apes as I have to get what I want."
Yeah,
and then you got I'm really bad at the characters' names. That's the one thing I'll say about this movie is I was thinking I need to rewatch this with captions at my house because
I'll agree.
There was a lot of the dialogue was sometimes hard to follow. Yeah. The names I couldn't get for the longest time.
I don't have it all down.
I never want to like read overly into like a name. Like, why is the main character named Noah? Did they mean something by that? I honestly just think, thank goodness it was Noah because that was easy to understand.
Yep.
And some of the other ape names were not easy to understand.
They were not. I'll agree with that.
But where I was going with that is, the orangutan, whose name I don't remember, him being like the historian ape who really is wanting to preserve what Caesar says. No one in his tribe don't even have any connection or recollection of Caesar. And it's just interesting to see, like, again, the way societies actually play out. Mm-hmm. You've got someone who's remembering the history, people who have completely no concept of the history, and then people who have taken the history and manipulated the history. And it's almost like something you could study in school and be like, yes, this is the way societies.
It's fascinating.
There are different uses of it.
Yep.
And I love it as someone who likes the original trilogy and what Caesar represented, and then saying, let's skip ahead 300 years and see what's become of Caesar's legacy. Yeah. We can't not talk about Caesar, but also like, how do you pay tribute to Caesar in this world 300 years later? Well, this is exactly what would happen is some people are misusing him, some people are using him correctly, and other people have forgotten. And it's
all really smart.
Yeah. So I leave this going, in the end, I still I know I've said a lot of things that I like about this franchise. I can't put my finger on like one thing that it is that this franchise just does really well, other than they make perfect Planet of the Apes movies. Right. And that's what I like. For what a Planet of the Apes movie is, I can't believe that they pack in as much like smart consideration and details like that.
Yep. Yeah, they nail it. Big success. My only criticisms, and these are just, is that okay to move into that?
Yeah, let's
these are minor. These are nitpicky. Go see this movie. I think you'll enjoy it. I did find it, again, this is very picky. I will admit that. I thought it was a little clunky with her, and maybe they did it this way on purpose. I felt like I didn't quite make the connection of like, hey, there's something behind this wall we need to get.
Yeah.
That felt like I didn't quite make that connection, and maybe they wanted it to be that way. And even I was like, once Noah was like, all right, let's go home now. We've done what we need to do. I was still going, well, what was it they were after?
Yeah.
You find out it was just a way to operate the satellites. I don't know. I felt like something was missing to make that connection and to raise those stakes just a little bit. And that, again, that is just a very nitpicky thing on my part.
Yeah. I think probably they wanted to conceal her whole motivation entirely.
Probably. But I got a little lost in the weeds there for a minute.
Yeah. I definitely think it was a little too mysterious probably on both ends. Even Proximus, it was unclear. Like, I think what we're supposed to gather is he knew there were weapons in there.
Right.
And because when he sees her, he's so excited about the gun she pulls out. He's just like,
exactly.
So I'm like, I guess he wanted the weapons. But the way he describes it, he goes that whole spiel about evolution, and there's something in there that we need to like advance that you're never sure like what he's even after.
And that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
And it almost felt to me like there was just a couple lines of dialogue that needed to be, it's like just missing just a couple of lines, not to spell everything out. Because we talk about that. I don't need movies to draw me a picture, but something was missing there for me just for a second. And I did think maybe one thing I would have played a little differently, because it didn't feel like it was part of her playing the long game. At the beginning, when the May character is kind of just following them, I thought they leaned a little too heavy into just like, it felt like a quick switch from like, I'm shivering and I'm cold and I just want some food to, I'm actually pretty manipulative. Like that was a little clunky.
It was. I wondered that's what I was going to bring this up after you brought the clunkiness of the end was on rewatch. I wonder if I'm going to go, they wanted the reveal to be more so surprising that there
really
wasn't consistency.
Yep.
They definitely did the like, she gave the throwaway line of like, my mom taught me to act like the simple ones
that's fair.
So that I could blend in and not like stand out because they'll look for us smart ones. But still, like you said, am I going to rewatch it and go like, boy, they're really overplaying it? And
again, maybe. I know these are nitpicks.
Yeah.
I am nitpicking. And then the last thing I want to say is I didn't want it necessarily the giant, like we talked about, clan versus clan, huge fight. Maybe this is just selfish because I thought the movie looked so great. I love the scene of them in the weeds. I would have liked one more little set piece like that.
Yeah.
And that's just a personal thing. Like, I'm not saying like, man, I wish this was just a full-blown action movie. But I think because everything was so well done, wouldn't hurt my feelings to have just one more, I don't know, just a little set piece like her in those weeds.
Yeah.
All nitpicks though.
Yeah. So in the end, we're saying like strong recommend.
Strong recommend.
Go see this movie.
See it up on the big screen.
I could not get a good number for how it's done so far in the box office.
I did.
I saw like some predictions but I couldn't see.
So it hit 56 million in the US.
Okay.
It hit big overseas, like 78 million.
That is one thing I noticed looking at even the previous Apes movies is the overseas really boosted numbers, which makes sense because they're the types of movies, they're very visually dependent because the apes are not very verbally expressive.
Right.
I could see how language barriers wouldn't be as big a deal. For
you
these
understand
apes movies. It's sort of universal languages in these movies. But I'm glad
it's already
to hear
hit like 130
well.
something worldwide.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I did read where, for this type of movie, $120 million budget.
Yeah.
Which, for better or worse, is a smaller budget for a movie like this. In other words, it can make less. It doesn't have to make $3 billion.
Right.
So I think it unless it just has some kind of terrible drop off, I mean, we're already well on our way to success. So.
That's great. That's good to hear.
I'm happy. It's like, it's funny because how many times are we like, ugh, not another sequel? But look, if you want to continue this world, I'm gonna be on board, and it sounds like you will too.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And of course, it's one of those things you're like, well, as long as you keep having interesting stories, and you don't know you don't have it until you go see the movie.
Exactly.
But it's like, well, I don't know. Like they definitely did a good job of leaving things open, and
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say to the studios who make these movies is keep doing like you're doing.
Yeah.
With being very patient with the stories and very limiting. The one thing I love they haven't done is they haven't said like, okay, let's start expanding the universe. Let's start telling stories that are, attached side. Let's do a TV show spinoff. Don't do any of that.
No.
And don't do arbitrary deadlines of like, okay, we need the next one by this date. So keep just waiting, going, when we have a good story to tell,
we will tell.
That's when we'll tell it. Mm-hmm. And I think if you do that, you can keep this franchise in the long run will be much more successful for longer.
I think so.
Than trying to rush into a whole bunch of
absolutely
branching out IP.
And if the end goal is to have some huge battle between some two clans of apes, then that's fine. But keep taking your time and building to that instead of just giving it to us right away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you see like Transformers 5 and it's like, well, now it's this bad guy versus this good guy. And you're like, yeah, but that's what Transformers 4, 3, 2, and 1 were. It's like Godzilla, Kong. It's like, yeah, you've done this. You're not building towards anything interesting. And he's like, so that's why it's like by the time Avengers Endgame rolls out and it's two giant armies battling, they earned that.
Right.
They took their time and they earned that. And it was packed full of characters you cared about. So this has the potential, if that's where it's going, maybe it's not going into some giant ape battle. But if it is, take your time, make us care about the characters first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're always going to care more about the battle.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And like I said, I've said it before, you've never been more right than when you talked about you don't need the enormous scope and scale.
Yeah.
You can tell these smaller stories with these interesting characters. So that way, by the time you're just on a bridge, you care.
Yeah.
You're interested and you're invested.
Yeah. And that's, to that point, these movies are called Planet of the Apes, but all these stories take place in so they're all in just this one little part of California, I guess, because that's where the first movie started,
right.
And they haven't branched out from there. So they're all just very centrally located. They're not trying to tell you the story of the planet.
The literal planet.
Yeah.
Even just like, Noah going on this journey to find his clan, it's like it didn't feel like he traveled for months.
Right.
It felt like I had to take a few day journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Go see it. Sounds like people are.
Yeah.
And, give us feedback because, as you know, you talked to my wife this morning. She did not love this movie. She's not a movie fan.
Which is hilarious because the thing
what did she tell you? What did she say to you?
She said, when I went into it, I thought, oh, it would be like the old ones where they're like, they're wearing clothes and talking like normal people.
Like, they weren't smart.
She goes, I didn't expect to have to be listening to broken English for 2 hours.
It was funny. But you know what? I will say this, like, in her defense, she doesn't claim to be a movie nerd.
Right. She's
just a casual moviegoer. And I'd be interested to hear from other people. And she did say, she was like, boy, that was slower than I thought. I mean, she wasn't mad. She didn't say like, I hated that movie because it was slow. She was just surprised.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you're more casual moviegoers or maybe people that don't have a history with the franchise, like you and I talked about, are expected. So I definitely would say that. Like, this is not a nonstop. This is not Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
Where it's just, these people just fight.
Yeah. I mean, even you have to wonder if the Kong times Godzilla, if people are thinking like, oh, this will be something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just not big action spectacle.
Right. So that threw her, she was like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to be a slow.
Yeah, these are more thoughtful movies than.
And that's just, for better, right or wrong, that just wasn't what she was expecting. So,
yeah. So we say this all the time. Not enough people take us up on this. Let us know. You see King of the Planet of the Apes, make it, leave a comment, message us something. Yeah. We would love to hear feedback of what people are thinking. We don't expect
everyone to agree with us.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, if this isn't your cup of tea, that's fine. But go give it a shot. And I want, like you said at the beginning, we do this because we love movies. I want people to see that you can have the cool effects and you can have fights and battles and them chasing each other at the end when the place is flooding. It looks awesome, but you don't have to just accept just dumb loudness up on the screen like people do with Transformers. Like, you can have both. You can have the cool action and the amazing visuals, but you can have good story and interesting characters. If nothing else came of you and I podcasting together, if people would just kind of take that lesson, I would be a happy camper.
Well said.
Yeah, and this is a great movie to showcase that. So
yeah. Next week, we talked about this last week, but just to remind everyone, we're going to be returning to 1999, our 25th anniversary movies.
Mm-hmm.
You chose The Sixth Sense.
I did.
I'm very interested to I'm probably actually more excited to revisit that than the movie I chose.
Been so long.
Which is Office Space.
Yeah.
So we've got a silly comedy. We've got a very important. I don't even know what technical category you'd put Sixth Sense under. I guess suspense, maybe.
Suspense, I would say.
Yeah. So
it's definitely not an outright horror movie,
right?
It's like a suspense drama almost. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to revisit that. I hope people will revisit that with us.
Please do.
Share your I'll put out polls like, what do you guys think about this movie, just to get some people's comments.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate any annoying answers like I got last time with best Ryan Gosling movie.
Yeah.
Where people wanted to put
Don't
Remember the
set
Titans.
yourself up where people can poke the bear about.
I kind of knew that could happen. I just couldn't believe the degree to which that happened.
The volume and which it happened.
Which actually I guess made me feel a little better because it's like, sometimes I worry nobody listens to the pod. But obviously, enough people listen or pay attention enough to know
how you feel
that
about
the funny
Remember the
answer
Titans,
was
right?
Remember the Titans. So I guess I take that as a compliment.
They meant it as an insult.
Yes.
It only built you up.
That's exactly right. And then the following week, Furiosa, which we're very excited about.
I'm excited.
A lot of good stuff coming up in the podcast. Hope you guys will continue tuning in with us.
Go to the movies, people.
If nothing else, click and play on that episode and just letting it ride.
Hold your laundry and let us just be on in the background.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next week.